Hello everyone and welcome to Grandstand Sports Data. In today's video, we're going to be giving you the round 2 betting preview between the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll be breaking down this matchup fundamentally, statistically, and then most importantly through all the betting insights that we have. So let's get right into it. Okay, so let's break down this matchup statistically. And as you can see from just looking at the top, the power ratings and the differentials, you can see here that Toronto edges out Florida in power metrics. So you're talking about Grandstand Sports Data power rating, and then the SRS with HockeyReference.com. Then they have those small leads in both goal differentials, as we were talking about as well. So goal differential and even strength goal differential. Marginal, but both teams are solid, and neither is dominant in these areas. So something to take a look at. For the special teams now, Toronto, a bit more dangerous. They have a power play in the top 10 of the NHL, but their penalty kill is vulnerable. It's about 17th in the NHL, and that could be exploited if they're on the kill in most of these games during the series. Florida's penalty kill is better, though. They take the most penalties in the league, which is going to hurt them at being 32nd in the NHL. So that's a recipe for trouble, especially against a skilled team like the Leafs. Goaltending now, you can see Leafs have the edge here in terms of just the season statistics, about 905 in terms of their season save percentage, and then on the other side where it's 896 for Florida. So the goalie spot for Toronto is one of their rare strengths in the playoffs, and that's saying something, right? Usually it's not a strength of theirs. Moving on to shooting and possession, you can see Florida absolutely dominates these possession metrics. Number 2 in Corsi, number 2 in scoring chance percentage, but you got to take a look. They're 29th in finishing. But what this is saying is you can see these red metrics like scoring chance percentage, control, Corsi, and shot differential. They're in red because they are the 3 highest when it comes to win percentage in the playoffs. So teams with the edge in these specific metrics usually win, even if they're not rated as high as you can see from up here. So that's something to take a look at. Toronto now, they're the opposite in some of these metrics. They're bottom 5 in possession, which isn't good, and they convert their chances well with being 8th in finishing. So this is pure volume versus efficiency matchup. Toronto's shooters capitalize before Florida's depth overwhelms. That's going to be the big question. The final read from looking at this, though, is that Florida controls the puck and the shot volume. But if they don't finish, it's not going to matter, right? The possession won't matter. Toronto, they have the edge in special teams and goaltending. Goaltending on paper, remember that. But they'll be chasing the puck for long stretches. Whichever side imposes their style is going to win this. So it's going to be that grind and dominate versus that capitalize and counter team. Now moving on to some of the fundamentals, right? We're going to move on to some of the coaching and experience. You can see from the coaching, Maurice versus Berube, it's neither has a major edge in playoff win percentages. You can see the win percentages are not really identical, but one is just a bit over 500, where the other one's just a tad below 500. Both bring playoff cup wins. Got to remember that. Maurice brings consistency and defensive structure, while Berube is still early with Toronto, so they might be still forming their identity, especially in these later season, like the playoffs and things of that nature. Moving on to player quality, we're talking about Corsi 4 percentage and plus minus in the playoffs. To Florida's top 6 is basically steadier. You got Verhage, Barkov, and Marchand. All bring solid Corsi 4 percentage in impact metrics. So got to take a look at that. Toronto Stars, they're flashier, right? But a little less consistent. You can see that with Marner, Matthews, and Nylander, they produce. But guys like Tavares with a minus 16 and plus minus, they don't really help out come playoff time. Even though it's Corsi 4, it may look like he's tilting the ice in his favor, but being a minus 16 in that stretch, it's not a good look. Now let's take a look at the defensive units for each of the teams now. You can see Florida's blue line, not necessarily elite, but more balanced top to bottom. Not a ton of the more possession metrics for the Corsi 4, but they're not disastrous. As you can see, there's still being production made on that end. Toronto's D, they have a high plus minus in spots, but overall lower Corsi 4 percentage. You can see that. That's going to cause some red flags. Guys like McCabe and then Brandon Carlo. I'm a fan of the Boston Bruins, and I have been the flag bearer, the guy standing at the front of the line telling everyone Brandon Carlo is a soft playoff performer. Toronto is, I'm sorry, but you're going to witness that at some point or the other during this playoff push. Moving on to goaltenders now. Stolarz, he's been great, right? He's been excellent in I guess you could call him in small sample sizes. He's down in terms of his goals saved above average, but his quality starts, he's almost pitching 67%. Every time he goes onto the ice, he's giving you a quality start. That's pretty big. Bobrovsky, obviously, his name does pretty good, 54% in terms of his quality starts, but you got to remember how much more experience he has. So that 54 is really a good sample size where Stolar's, you don't know if he's going to come back to earth, and his is going to be brought down to more of the 50 range. So this isn't usually the narrative, but just on paper and looking at these numbers, it looks like Toronto may have the edge in goaltending. I would kick back on that because this is when you really have to dig into the fundamentals. Bobrovsky, knowing his experience, knowing how long he's been doing this, I think it's pretty obvious that they would have the edge in net. So maybe on paper Toronto has a better goalie play, but you're gonna see them. They have more top end scoring, right? That can be dangerous if their stars get space. But Florida, they play with that more structure and consistency, less volatility, but needs their stars to carry the possession advantage. So I'd expect a tight, pace controlled series, and if Toronto's goaltending holds, they've got a better than high leverage in terms of their playmakers. They get that better opportunity. Okay, so let's take a look at what the numbers say. So these are obviously the results of more of the profitable factors that we've seen in the last two slides in the last 5 years of the playoffs. This isn't necessarily split down the middle, but as you can see, Toronto, they have four edges where Florida has more than that. I mean, Florida basically dominates the possession, the shot, and model based factors. You can see our model kind of gives you what you'll see in the future. So in terms of, later on in the video, but Toronto, they actually take the edge in some of the team strength ratings and goal-based metrics, as you can see. Let's go back to Florida, though. Florida, they're profitable in Corsi for percentage, shot differential, Corsi, and then scoring chance percentage, right? You might ask, what's the difference between Corsi for percentage and then Corsi? Well, Corsi is what we were looking at in the first slide, which is the statistical. All season long, how good were they in terms of their Corsi play? Corsi for percentage is when we looked at it fundamentally, breaking down the players in their playoff historicals. So that's where the difference comes. Both have landed in the red, and both have proven to be profitable when it comes to playoff success. Florida holding the edge in both of those. So possession heavy profile that trends profitable in playoff series. That's basically what this is telling you. So the model likes Florida too. Remember, you can see that down here at the bottom. So Moneyline and spread factors will show value. We'll go over that in the future, towards the end of the video. Toronto now, their strengths show up in efficiency-based metrics. You're going to see goal differential, even strength goal differential. Also, hockeyreference.com with their SRS rating. These tell us Toronto converts their limited chances more effectively, right? That's been the story throughout this whole video. And that's been historically profitable at a moderate clip, though. You got to remember, moderate clip, especially when they avoid overexposure. So, how would you interpret this as a better? Florida is the volume side, and those stats have paid off in playoff settings, where Toronto is the more efficient but lower volume team. So they're reliant on finishing and conversion. The edge goes to how much you value volume versus efficiency. So this is really a coin flip in your hands. But if recent playoff profitability is the guide, Florida's stat profile has been cashing more often. The final read would be if you're playing into the data, Florida has the stronger betting edge. If you're relying on conversion, goaltending, and fewer mistakes, Toronto can still make noise, but it's less bankable profile in the long term. Let's take a look at some of the money line betting trends in this matchup, and we're going to forget the season records, right? The real story is how these teams compare to each other in market performance. Starting with Florida, you can see they went 51 and 36, but still lost money. Why? Because the market consistently priced them like a dominant team, and they didn't provide value. They're a possession heavy side that the books respect, meaning you're often laying a price with little margin. Just remember that. Toronto, on the other hand, was a bettor's dream late in the season. They went 56 and 32, and they were up 12.07 units. That's good for a 13.7% return. So they were steamrolling expectations. The market kept undervaluing them, likely due to negative sentiment around their inconsistency, and then maybe even their past playoff failures when you started getting towards the end of the year. So what does this mean for the series? Don't be fooled by Florida's shiny stats. You're likely paying a premium again. Remember that. That makes them vulnerable to being overpriced in a tight series. Toronto now, they may still be slightly undervalued, and if that continues, you'll find better prices on money lines and maybe even in-game live settings, especially if they drop on early game. Remember that. So keep that in mind. What do you watch for, though? Game one line movement is the first one I would look at. If Florida opens as a moderate favorite and steam hits their side, watch for Toronto to bounce back in game two. That's something I would look into. Another thing is series pricing adjustments, right? If Toronto wins early, expect sharp bettors to keep riding them until the books adjust. I don't know about all that. If Toronto takes game one, I would go searching for Florida and their price. That's how I would look at it. But I gotta read what we've put down in terms of the trends and what you would see. So I have to give you both ends of it. I need to give you both sides of the coin. Uh, Next, you would want to look for live money line opportunities. When Florida controls puck possession but isn't finishing, this has been their Achilles heel all year. So look for that metric. Are they getting chances but not burying them? Might get a little bit nervous for some of the Florida backers. Final edge in this, something to look at in a vacuum. These are two evenly matched teams at the end of the day. But the betting market tells a different story. The betting market is telling you Florida is a little bit overvalued while Toronto is undervalued and profitable. So that tilt alone can shape how the series is attacked by sharp bettors. So here comes where the rubber meets the road, right? The series pricing, model predictions, and then the actual edge. So we're looking at the market versus the model breakdown. You can see Florida opens as the minus 170 favorite here, implying about a 63% chance to win the series. But the model is even more bullish. It's got them 74% in terms of their win probability in 10,000 simulations. So that's a 4 games to 1 projection from the model. If you're looking at the Toronto line now, even on the market, that's at plus 145. That's a just underdog value, but the model is clearly fading them. You can see that from the 26% game that they have winning in those 10,000 Monte Carlo simulations. So you could look at the spread of about 1.5 games at minus 130. That isn't giving much relief either, but it's something to look into. Key insight, the model sees Florida as significantly stronger, but just marginally better, and it's showing value even at a chalk price. That's rare in playoff markets where edge, usually tightens. What bettors should watch for? So if Toronto steals game one, the series price on Florida might drop closer to minus 120, and that could be an entry point for you. So look at that. Monitor live series pricing. If the books adjust off emotion and not math, the model could be backing a bounce back game for Florida. So some betting angles. If you trust the model and believe in market overcorrections, don't be afraid to fire early on Florida, especially if the line creeps towards minus 150. The spread at minus 1.5 at near even money is worth a look if you expect a short series as well. Bottom line is that the model thinks this isn't close. Public bettors might hesitate to lay the price, but sharp bettors know if the number is still underpriced, the profitability or for the profit probability, there's still going to be value. So how I'm looking at it, I kind of agree across the board here with the model. I think Toronto does, they usually, I guess you could call it overperform. They usually come back to earth and shit their pants late in series, especially when they're not, when they're in the, when I guess you would call them the inferior talent. So, this is one of those years where thank God they didn't play Boston. They usually lose to Boston. They got to play Ottawa. Now they're playing the team Florida. That Florida has been immensely better than Boston in the past, much more physical than them in the playoffs. And this could be a chance for this model to be absolutely correct at a 4 games to 1 look. That's how I'm looking at it. I think that getting Florida at plus money at the minus 1.5, I think that's some pretty good value there. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in to the NBA first round playoff preview. We hope you had a great time and picked up some awesome information. Now, don't forget to subscribe to Grandstand Sports Data for more great shows like this one. Also, don't forget to give this video a like and share it with your friends. And leave a comment down below on who you think is going to win this series. That's all for now, and we'll see you guys in the next one.